Tejo had seen many strange things in his 32 years of life. He had seen cars that should not run somehow drive for another 100,000 kilometers. He had seen machines declared dead by experts come back to life under his hands. He had even seen a motorcycle fall from a cliff and still work after he spent a weekend fixing it, but he had never seen anything like the woman standing before him. She was tall, at least 2 meters. Her skin was the color of silver, and it seemed to glow softly in the fading light. She had 4 eyes, all of them a deep purple that reminded him of the night sky. She wore long robes that flowed around her body like water. On her head sat a crown made of some kind of crystal dot. She was clearly not human. She was clearly not from Earth, and she was clearly in trouble. "You want to help me?" the alien woman asked. Her voice was musical, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Tejo shrugged. "That is what I do. I fix things. It does not matter if it is a car or a tractor or a spaceship. Broken is broken, and broken things can usually be fixed." The alien woman stared at him for a long moment. Tejo felt like she was looking right through him, reading his thoughts, judging his worth. He simply stood there and waited. He was not a man who scared easily. "I am Queen Vela of the Kiran Empire," she finally said. "I rule over 12 star systems and billions of subjects. My ship is powered by technology that is older than your entire species. What makes you think you can fix it?" Tejo scratched the back of his head. "Well, I do not know if I can, but I can try. That is all anyone can do, right?" "Try." Queen Vela continued to stare at him. Then, to his surprise, she smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it was there. "You are a strange creature, human. What is your name?" "Tejo. Kim Tejo." "Very well, Tejo. You may try." She turned and walked back toward her ship. Tejo followed, his toolbox in hand. As he got closer to the vessel, he felt his heart beat faster. Not from fear, but from excitement. He had spent his whole life working on machines. He understood them better than he understood people. And this machine, this massive silver ship, was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. The inside of the ship was dark. Emergency lights glowed softly along the walls, casting everything in a red shadow. Strange creatures moved around him, aliens of different shapes and sizes. Some had multiple arms. Some had no arms at all. Some looked at him with fear. Others looked at him with disgust. None of them looked at him with hope, except Queen Vela. "This way," she said, leading him deeper into the ship. "The engine room is at the center of the vessel. That is where the core is located." They walked through long corridors and past many rooms. Tejo saw sleeping quarters, dining halls, control rooms filled with blinking lights. Everything was advanced beyond his imagination. And yet, the basic ideas were the same. This was a ship. It needed power to move. It needed systems to stay alive. It was a machine, just like any other machine. They reached the engine room. It was a massive space, as big as a football field. In the center stood a giant sphere made of some kind of glass or crystal. Inside the sphere, Tejo could see a faint light pulsing weakly. "That is the core," Queen Vela said. "It was built by the Ancient Ones, a species that died out millions of years ago. No one alive knows how it works. No one alive knows how to fix it." Tejo walked closer to the sphere. He could feel heat coming from it, but it was weak, dying. He placed his hand on the glass surface and closed his eyes. "Tell me what you know," he said. "Tell me everything." Queen Vela watched him with curiosity. This human was different from what she had expected. He did not seem impressed by the technology around him. He did not seem scared by the situation. He simply focused on the problem, like a doctor examining a patient. "The core converts dark energy into power," she explained. It has worked perfectly for thousands of years. But 3 days ago, it began to fail. Our engineers have checked everything. There is no damage, no leak, no malfunction that they can find. It is simply dying. Tejo opened his eyes and looked at the core. Something is blocking the energy, he said softly. It is not dying. It is being choked. Queen Vila moved closer. What do you mean? Tejo pointed to a series of tubes connected to the sphere. These tubes carry the energy from the core to the rest of the ship. Yes? Yes. Then the problem is not the core. The problem is the delivery system. Something is stuck in these tubes. The energy cannot flow. A small alien with 6 arms rushed forward. It was Boro, the chief engineer. Impossible, he shouted. We have checked those tubes 100 times. They are perfectly clean. Tahoe shook his head. You checked them with your eyes. But some blockages cannot be seen. They can only be felt. He opened his toolbox and pulled out a long metal rod. It was a simple tool, used for cleaning pipes. Nothing fancy. Nothing advanced. Just a basic tool that any mechanic on Earth would recognize. May I? Tejo asked, gesturing to one of the tubes. Queen Vela nodded. Boro stepped back, his face full of doubt. Tejo disconnected one of the tubes and inserted his tool. He pushed it slowly, carefully, feeling for any resistance. For a long time, there was nothing. The tube seemed clean, just as Boro had said. Then Tejo felt it. A small bump. A tiny blockage that his tool could barely touch. There, he said. There is something there. He pushed harder, and suddenly, a small object popped out of the tube. It fell to the floor with a soft click. Everyone gathered around to look. It was a tiny crystal, no bigger than a grain of rice. It glowed faintly with a purple light. What is that? Tejo asked. Queen Vela picked up the crystal, and her face went pale. This is a royal seal. It is a device used by the Kiran royal family to mark our property. She looked up at her crew, her 4 eyes burning with anger. Someone placed this in the tube on purpose. Someone sabotaged my ship. The room fell silent. Tejo looked around at the alien crew. Their faces showed shock, fear, and in some cases, guilt. We can discuss traitors later, Tejo said calmly. Right now, we need to check all the other tubes. If there is one crystal, there might be more. Queen Vila looked at him. In her eyes, Tejo saw something new. Respect. You're right, Tejo, she said. Please, continue. For the next several hours, Tejo worked without rest. He checked every tube, every connection, every pathway that carried energy from the core. He found 7 more crystals, each one blocking the flow like tiny dams in a river. As he removed the last crystal, the core began to glow brighter. The pulsing light grew stronger. The heat increased. And slowly, the ship began to come back to life. Lights flickered on throughout the vessel. Machines hummed with new energy. The crew cheered and embraced each other. Queen Vela stood in the center of the engine room, watching Tejo with an expression he could not read. You did it, she said softly. You saved us. Tejo wiped the sweat from his forehead and smiled. The core is working, but the ship still needs repairs. The systems were without power for too long. Some of them have damage. If you want, I can take a look. Queen Vila tilted her head. You would do that? Help us more? Tejo shrugged. Like I said, fixing things is what I do. Besides, this is the most interesting machine I've ever worked on. I would hate to leave the job half done. For the first time since landing on Earth, Queen Vela laughed. It was a beautiful sound, like music from another world. Very well, Tejo, she said. You have my permission to continue. Show me what a human can do. Tejo grinned and picked up his toolbox. He had no idea what he had gotten himself into. But for the first time in a long time, he felt truly alive. The stars had always been kind to Queen Vela. For 300 years, she had traveled across the galaxy without fear. Her ship, the Silver Crown, was the finest vessel in the Kiran Empire. It had carried her through wars, through peace, and through the endless darkness of space. But today, the stars were not kind. The warning lights flashed red across the control room. Vela stood from her throne and walked to the main screen. Her silver skin glowed softly in the emergency lighting. Her 4 eyes, each one a deep purple, scanned the data before her. "What is happening?" she asked. Her voice was calm, but inside she felt the first touch of worry. Her chief engineer, a small creature named Boro, rushed to her side. His 6 hands moved quickly over the controls. Sweat dripped from his green face. "The core, my queen," he said. "The energy core is failing. I do not understand why. The readings make no sense." Vela looked at the screen. The numbers were indeed strange. The core was losing power, but there was no damage. No leak, no explosion. It was simply dying, like a candle running out of wax. "Can you fix it?" Vela asked. Boro shook his head slowly. His large eyes were filled with fear. "I have never seen anything like this, my queen. The technology is beyond my understanding. This core was built by the Ancient Ones. No one alive knows how to repair it." Vela closed her main eyes and took a deep breath. She had conquered 12 star systems. She had defeated armies that numbered in the millions. She had lived longer than most species could imagine. But now, she was helpless. "How long do we have?" she asked. "A few hours," Burrow replied. "Maybe less. After that, we will have no power, no heat, no air." The queen opened her eyes and looked at the stars through the main window. They were beautiful as always, but now they seemed cold and distant. "Where are we?" she asked. A young officer at the navigation station spoke up. "We are near a small planet, my queen. The locals call it Earth. It is in a remote part of the galaxy. Very primitive." Vela had heard of Earth. It was a young world, filled with even younger creatures called humans. They had only recently discovered space travel. In the grand history of the universe, they were like babies taking their first steps. "Can we land there?" Vela asked. The officer checked his screens. "Yes, my queen. We have enough power to land. But I must warn you, the humans are not advanced. They will not be able to help us." Vela nodded slowly. She understood. But landing on a primitive planet was better than dying in the cold darkness of space. "Take us down," she commanded. "Find a quiet place. We do not want to cause panic among the locals." The Silver Crown turned slowly toward the blue and green planet below. Vela watched as Earth grew larger in the window. It was a beautiful world, she had to admit. Blue oceans covered most of its surface. White clouds drifted lazily across the sky. Green land spread out like patches on a blanket. Perhaps, she thought, this would not be such a bad place to rest. The ship entered the atmosphere. Fire surrounded the vessel as it pushed through the air. The crew held on to their stations as the ship shook and trembled. Vela stood firm, her hands clasped behind her back. A queen did not show fear. They broke through the clouds and saw the land below. Mountains rose in the distance. A city sat near the coast, its lights twinkling in the early evening. The navigation officer guided the ship away from the populated areas. They found a large open space near the edge of the city. It appeared to be some kind of storage area, filled with old machines and broken vehicles. The Silver Crown landed with a heavy thud. The engines groaned and then fell silent. The lights flickered once, twice, and then dimmed to almost nothing. Boro approached the queen with a tablet in his hands. "We have landed safely, my queen, but the core is nearly dead. We have perhaps 1 hour of emergency power remaining." Vila nodded. "Open the main door. I will go outside and assess our situation." The crew looked at her with surprise. A queen walking on a primitive planet? It was unheard of. But Vila was not an ordinary queen. She had led her soldiers into battle many times. She was not afraid of a little danger. The main door opened slowly, and Vela stepped out into the cool evening air. The smells of earth filled her nose. Metal, smoke, salt from the nearby ocean. It was strange, but not unpleasant. She looked around the area. Piles of old machines surrounded her ship. Broken vehicles. Rusted metal. Abandoned equipment. This appeared to be a place where humans threw away their unwanted things. Vila felt a touch of sadness. Her mighty ship, the pride of the Kirin Empire, had landed in a garbage dump. She heard a sound nearby. Footsteps. Vela turned and saw a figure approaching through the shadows. It was a human, she realized. A male, based on his shape. He was not tall, but he walked with confidence. In his hands, he carried a box of tools. The human stopped a few meters away and stared at her. His eyes were wide, but he did not run. He did not scream. He simply stood there, looking at her with what appeared to be curiosity. Vila studied him in return. He wore dirty clothes covered in oil and grease. His hair was black and messy. His face was young but showed signs of hard work. This was not a scholar or a warrior. This was a worker, a maker of things. "Hello," the human said. His voice was calm and steady. "That is a very big ship you have there. Is it broken?" Vila blinked all 4 of her eyes. She had expected fear. She had expected worship. She had expected many things, but not this simple question. "Yes," she replied slowly. "It is broken." The human nodded and looked at the silver crown. He tilted his head to one side, studying the vessel like a doctor studying a patient. "I am pretty good at fixing things," he said. "Would you like some help?" Vela stared at him. This small, primitive creature was offering to help her? The queen of the Kirin Empire? It was absurd. It was impossible. And yet, as she looked into his calm, confident eyes, she felt something she had not felt in a very long time. Hope. Queen Vela could not sleep. She lay in her royal chambers, staring at the ceiling. The room was beautiful, filled with soft light and comfortable furniture. Paintings from 100 different worlds decorated the walls. The bed was made of clouds, or something that felt like clouds. It was the most luxurious room on the ship. But tonight, all of that luxury meant nothing. Tonight, Vela's mind was somewhere else. On someone else.t-ho. She had lived for over 300 years. She had met kings and emperors, warriors and scholars, artists and scientists. She had seen beings of incredible beauty and power. She had married once, long ago, to a prince from a distant system. But he had died in a war, and she had never found anyone to replace him. Until now. Vela sat up in bed and looked at her reflection in the mirror across the room. Her silver skin glowed softly in the dim light. Her 4 eyes stared back at her, filled with confusion and wonder. What is happening to me? She whispered. She was the queen of the Kirin Empire. She ruled over billions of subjects. She had conquered 12 star systems with her intelligence and strength. She was one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. And yet, a simple human mechanic had made her feel things she had not felt in centuries. Vila got out of bed and walked to the window. She could see the salvage yard outside, piles of old machines and broken vehicles. In the distance, the city lights of Bizan twinkled like stars. It was a primitive world, she thought. Simple, basic, nothing like the grand civilization she was used to. But there was something. beautiful about it? Something real. Something honest. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. "Enter," she said. The door opened, and Boro walked in. The small engineer looked tired, but there was a smile on his face. "I apologize for disturbing you, my queen," he said. "But I thought you would want to know. The final repairs are complete. The ship is ready to fly." Vila nodded slowly. "Good. That is good news." Boro studied her face. He had served the queen for over 50 years. He knew her better than almost anyone. And right now, he could see that something was troubling her. "My queen," he said carefully, "may I speak freely?" "You may." Boro took a deep breath. "The human, Tejo. He is remarkable. I have never seen anyone like him. The way he fixed our ship, the way he solved problems that defeated our best engineers. It was like watching magic." Vila smiled softly. "Yes, he is remarkable. I have been thinking," Boro continued, "about what makes him different. He does not have our technology. He does not have our knowledge. He does not have our resources. And yet, he succeeded where we failed. Why?" Vila looked at the engineer with interest. "What is your answer?" Boro thought for a moment. "I believe it is because he is not afraid to try. We have become too careful, too dependent on our machines. When something does not fit our understanding, we give up. But Tejo does not give up. He keeps trying, keeps experimenting, keeps looking for new solutions. He's not afraid to fail." Vila nodded. "You are right. There is a freedom in his approach, a boldness that we have lost. May I ask a personal question, my queen?" "You may." Boro hesitated. "What are your feelings for this human?" Vila was silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. "I do not know. I have never felt anything like this before. When I am near him, my heart beats faster. When he smiles, I feel warm inside. When I think about leaving this planet, leaving him behind, I feel a pain in my chest that I cannot explain." Boro nodded slowly. "I see. Then perhaps the question is not what your feelings are, but what you will do about them." Vila looked at him. "What would you suggest?" "That is not for me to say, my queen, but I will tell you this. In all my years of service, I have never seen you as happy as you have been these past few days. That happiness is worth something. Perhaps it is worth everything." With that, Boro bowed and left the room. Vela stood alone, thinking about his words. The next morning, she went to find Te-Ho. He was in the engine room, as usual. Even though the repairs were complete, he had found more things to improve. He was lying under a control panel, his hands working on wires that did not need working on. The alien crew had stopped questioning him. They simply let him do what he wanted. They had learned that his strange methods usually led to good results. "Tao-ho," Vala called. He slid out from under the panel and looked up at her. His face was covered in grease. His hair was a mess. His clothes were dirty and torn. But when he smiled, Vila felt her heart skip a beat. "Good morning, Your Majesty," he said. "Did you sleep well?" "I did not sleep at all," she admitted. "I was thinking." Tejo stood up and wiped his hands on a rag. "Thinking about what?" Vila hesitated. She was not used to being unsure of her words. She always knew what to say, how to say it, when to say it. She was a queen. Words were her weapons. But now, standing before this simple human, she felt like a young girl again, nervous, uncertain, afraid. "Walk with me," she said finally. "I want to show you something." They left the engine room and walked through the ship. Vela led him to the observation deck, a large room with windows that showed the stars. From here, you could see the entire galaxy, a billion points of light spread across the darkness. "This is beautiful," Tahoe said softly. I have seen this view 1,000 times, Vela replied. But tonight I see it differently. Tonight, I see it through your eyes. Tahoe looked at her. What do you mean? Vela took a deep breath. I have conquered 12 star systems. I have ruled for 300 years. I have seen wonders that most beings cannot imagine. But somewhere along the way, I stopped really seeing them. I stopped appreciating them. I stopped feeling wonder. She turned to face him. You have reminded me what it means to feel wonder, Tahoe. When you look at a machine, you see possibilities. When you face a problem, you see challenges to overcome. You approach everything with curiosity and hope. That is something I had lost. Something you have given back to me. Tahoe was silent. He did not know what to say. My ship is repaired, Vela continued. I could leave tomorrow. I could return to my empire, to my throne, to my endless responsibilities. But I do not want to. What do you want? Tahoe asked quietly. Vela looked into his eyes. I want to stay here with you. I want to learn more about your world, your people, your way of seeing things. I want to feel this wonder every day. I want... She paused, searching for the right words. I want to be near you. The observation deck was silent. The stars shone outside, ancient and eternal. And in that moment, two beings from different worlds stood at the edge of something new. I am not a king, Tahoe said finally. I am not a warrior or a diplomat. I am just a mechanic. I fix things for a living. I live in a small house next to a salvage yard. I do not have much to offer you. Vela smiled and took his hand. Her cool fingers wrapped around his warm ones. You have already given me more than you know, she said. You have given me hope. You have given me wonder. You have given me a reason to smile. Those things are worth more than all the riches in the galaxy. Tahoe looked at their joined hands. Her silver skin glowed softly against his brown one. They were so different, from different worlds, different species, different lives. And yet, holding her hand felt like the most natural thing in the universe. What happens now? He asked. Vela leaned closer, her face only inches from his. Now, she whispered, we decide together. Outside the window, a shooting star streaked across the sky. A sign, perhaps. A promise of things to come. Neither of them saw it. They were too busy looking at each other, and in that look, 1,000 words were spoken without sound. 3 days passed on the Silver Crown. 3 days of work, sweat, and miracles. Tahoe barely slept. He moved from one part of the ship to another, fixing problems that the alien engineers had declared impossible. When a power relay burned out, he built a new one from parts he found in his salvage yard. When the navigation computer glitched, he rewrote the code using basic logic that any human programmer would understand. When the artificial gravity generator failed, he spent 18 hours taking it apart and putting it back together. The alien crew watched him with growing amazement. They had technology that was millions of years more advanced than anything on Earth. They had traveled across galaxies. They had seen wonders that no human could imagine. And yet, this simple mechanic from a primitive planet was solving problems that their best engineers could not touch. Boro, the chief engineer, was the most confused of all. He followed Tahoe everywhere, asking questions, taking notes, trying to understand. How did you know that the power relay needed more cooling? Boro asked one morning. Tahoe shrugged. I touched it. It was too hot. When something is too hot, it needs cooling. Simple. But our sensors showed normal temperature readings, Boro insisted. Your sensors were wrong. Sometimes you have to trust your hands more than your machines. Boro wrote this down in his notebook. Trust your hands. He had never heard such advice before. In the Kirin Empire, everything was done by machines. Sensors, computers, automated systems. The idea of trusting simple human touch seemed almost crazy, and yet it worked. On the second day, Taiho discovered that the ship's communication system was damaged. Signals were going out, but they were scrambled and weak. The alien engineers had spent hours checking the software, looking for bugs and errors. They found nothing. Taiho looked at the communication antenna outside the ship. It was a beautiful piece of technology, a tall silver tower covered in blinking lights. But something about it looked wrong to him. "Can someone give me a ladder?" he asked. The aliens looked at each other. They did not use ladders. They had floating platforms that could carry them anywhere. But Taiho did not want a floating platform. He wanted something simple. Finally, one of the crew members found an emergency ladder in a storage room. It was old and dusty, probably never used. Taiho grabbed it and carried it outside. He climbed up the antenna, his eyes scanning every part of the structure. The aliens watched from below, nervous and confused. What was this human doing? Near the top of the antenna, Taiho found the problem. A small bird had built a nest between two of the signal transmitters. It was nothing special, just a normal Earth bird looking for a warm place to sleep. But the nest was blocking the signals, causing the scramble. Taiho carefully removed the nest and placed it in a nearby tree. When he climbed down, the communication system was working perfectly. "A bird," Boro said, shaking his head. "All that time, and it was just a bird." Taiho smiled. Sometimes the biggest problems have the smallest causes. You just have to look with your own eyes. On the third day, Taiho faced his greatest challenge. The ship's defense system had gone offline during the power failure, and it would not restart. This was a serious problem. Without defenses, the Silver Crown was vulnerable to attack. The defense system was controlled by a massive computer in the heart of the ship. It was the most advanced technology on the vessel, built with knowledge that was ancient even by Kiran standards. No one alive fully understood how it worked. Tay-Ho stood before the computer and studied it for a long time. It was a wall of crystals, lights, and strange symbols. Nothing like the computers he was used to. Nothing like any machine he had ever seen. Queen Vila stood beside him. "This system was designed by the Ancient Ones," she said. "Even our greatest scientists cannot fully understand it. Perhaps this task is beyond you." Taiho did not reply. He was thinking, his mind working through the problem. The system would not restart. That meant something was preventing it from starting. But what? He closed his eyes and listened. The room was quiet, but not silent. He could hear the hum of power flowing through the walls. He could hear the soft click of other machines doing their work. And he could hear something else. A faint noise, almost too quiet to notice. A vibration. Taiho opened his eyes and placed his hand on the computer. Yes, there it was. A tiny tremor running through the machine. Something inside was shaking when it should be still. "Do you have a way to look inside this computer without opening it?" he asked. Boro nodded and brought a scanning device. They pointed it at the computer and studied the image on the screen. Inside the machine, thousands of crystals floated in perfect arrangement. But one crystal, near the center, was vibrating, shaking, unstable. "There," Taiho said, pointing at the screen. "That crystal is loose. It is not in the right position. The system cannot start because that one piece is out of place." Queen Vila leaned closer. "You are right. But how do we fix it?" "The computer is sealed. Opening it would destroy the system." Taiho thought for a moment. Then he had an idea. It was crazy. It was stupid. It would probably not work. But it was worth trying. "Do you have any music on this ship?" he asked. The aliens looked at him like he had lost his mind. "Music?" Queen Vila repeated. "We have music, yes. But what does that have to do with anything? Every object has a frequency, Taiho explained. A specific vibration that it responds to. If we can find the right frequency, we might be able to move that crystal back into position without opening the machine. It was a simple idea based on basic physics. On Earth, scientists use sound waves to move tiny objects all the time. It was called acoustic levitation. Taiho had seen videos of it on the internet. He had never tried it himself, but the principle was sound. For the next few hours, Taiho and Boro experimented with different frequencies. They played music through the ship's speakers, adjusting the pitch and tone again and again. The alien crew watched in confusion. Some of them thought Taiho had finally gone mad. Then, suddenly, it happened. A deep, low note echoed through the room. On the scanning screen, the loose crystal stopped shaking. Slowly, gently, it drifted back into its proper position. It clicked into place, and the entire computer lit up with brilliant light. The defense system was online. The room erupted in cheers. Aliens who had doubted Taiho now rushed to shake his hand. Boro was crying, tears streaming down his green face. Even the guards, who had remained silent and stern throughout, were smiling. Queen Vila stood before Taiho, her 4 eyes glowing with emotion. "In 300 years, she said softly, I have never seen anything like what you have done. You have fixed technology that our best engineers called unfixable. You have used simple methods to solve complex problems. You have saved my ship and my crew." Taiho rubbed the back of his neck, embarrassed by the attention. "I just did what any mechanic would do. I looked at the problem and found a solution. That is all." "That is not all," Queen Vela replied. "You have shown me something that I had forgotten. Something that my people have forgotten. We have become so dependent on our technology that we have lost touch with the simple truths of the universe. You, Taiho, have reminded us what it means to truly understand a machine." She reached out and placed her hand on his shoulder. Her touch was cool and soft, like silk on skin. "The repairs are almost complete," she said. "Soon, my ship will be ready to fly again. But before we leave, I have one more request." Taiho looked up at her. "What is it?" Queen Vela smiled, and in that smile, Taiho saw something he had not expected. Warmth, affection, perhaps even love. "Stay with me," she said. "Join my crew. Travel the stars at my side. I could use a mechanic like you." Taiho stared at her. The Queen of 12 star systems was asking him, a simple salvage yard worker, to join her. It was unbelievable. It was impossible. And yet, as he looked into her purple eyes, he found himself seriously considering the offer. "Can I think about it?" he asked. Queen Vela laughed, that beautiful musical sound that made his heart skip a beat. "Of course," she said. "Take all the time you need." The morning sun rose over Bizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was the 5th day since the Silver Crown had crashed into the salvage yard, and everything had changed. Taiho stood outside his small house, drinking a cup of coffee. The steam rose into the cool morning air, mixing with his breath. He looked at the massive alien ship parked nearby, its silver surface reflecting the sunrise. A week ago, his biggest concern had been fixing an old truck for a customer. Now, he was in love with a queen from another galaxy. Life was strange. The main door of the ship opened, and Vila stepped out. She was wearing different clothes today, not her royal robes, but something simpler. She had asked Taiho's neighbor, an old woman named Sunya, to help her find human clothing. The result was a simple white dress that flowed around her tall frame. She looked beautiful, even more beautiful than usual. "Good morning," she said, walking toward him. "Good morning," he replied. "Did you sleep well?" Vila smiled. "Better than I have in years." There is something about this planet. The air, the sounds, the feeling of real ground beneath my feet. It is peaceful. Tejo offered her his coffee cup. Want to try some? It is called coffee. Humans drink it to wake up in the morning. Vila took the cup and sipped carefully. Her face twisted in surprise. It is bitter, she said, but also warm. Interesting. Tejo laughed. You get used to it. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the sun rise. In the distance, the city was waking up. Cars were starting to move on the roads. People were walking to work. It was an ordinary morning on an ordinary planet, but nothing about this moment felt ordinary. I have been thinking, Vila said finally. About what? About us. About the future. About what happens next. Tejo nodded. He had been thinking about the same things. How could he not? He was a human, and she was an alien queen. Their worlds were literally millions of light years apart. Any future they might have together seemed impossible. And yet, he could not imagine a future without her. My crew is ready to leave, Vila continued. The ship is repaired. All systems are functioning. They are waiting for my command. Tejo felt his heart sink. He had known this moment would come. He had prepared himself for it. But now that it was here, the pain was worse than he had expected. I understand, he said quietly. You have an empire to run. Billions of people depending on you. You cannot stay on a small planet at the edge of nowhere forever. Vila looked at him. That is true. I do have responsibilities. I do have an empire. But I also have a choice. And for the first time in 300 years, I want to make a choice for myself. She turned to face him fully. The morning light made her silver skin glow like fire. Her 4 purple eyes were fixed on his face with an intensity that made him forget to breathe. Tejo, she said, in my culture, when a queen finds someone worthy, she does not wait. She does not play games. She speaks her heart directly. She reached out and took both of his hands in hers. Then, slowly, gracefully, she lowered herself to one knee. Tejo's eyes went wide. What are you doing? I am doing what my heart tells me to do, Vela replied. Kim Tejo, you are a simple man from a simple planet. You have no wealth, no army, no political power. By the standards of my empire, you are nobody. Tejo smiled weakly. That is not a very romantic beginning. Vila laughed. Let me finish. You are nobody by those standards. But to me, you are everything. You showed me kindness when I was stranded. You showed me skill when my ship was broken. You showed me wonder when I had forgotten how to feel it. You reminded me that the greatest things in the universe are not power or wealth, but connection, understanding, love. She squeezed his hands tightly. I have ruled for 300 years, she continued. I have won wars and signed treaties. I have built cities and conquered worlds. But I have never been truly happy. I have never found someone who made my heart sing, until now. Tears were forming in Tejo's eyes. He tried to blink them away, but they fell anyway, rolling down his cheeks. Tejo, Vela said, her voice filled with emotion. I am asking you to be my partner, my equal, my king. I am asking you to rule beside me, to travel the stars with me, to share your wisdom and your wonder with my people. I am asking you to marry me. The salvage yard was silent. Even the birds had stopped singing. It was as if the entire universe was holding its breath, waiting for his answer. Tejo looked at the woman kneeling before him, the alien queen who had crashed into his life and turned everything upside down. The beautiful, powerful, ancient being who was offering him everything. He thought about his life on Earth, his small house, his salvage yard, his simple routines. It was a good life, but it was a lonely one. He had always felt like something was missing. like he was waiting for something he could not name. Now he knew what he had been waiting for. "I am just a mechanic," he said softly. "I do not know how to be a king. I do not know how to rule an empire. I do not know anything about your world or your people or your customs." Vela smiled. "You can learn. I will teach you. I will make mistakes. Many mistakes. We will make them together. And we will fix them together. That is what partners do." Tejo laughed, a sound mixed with joy and tears. "You really want to marry me?" A grease-covered mechanic from a salvage yard. Vela stood up and cupped his face in her hands. Her touch was cool and gentle. "I want to marry you," she said firmly. "The man who fixed my ship. The man who saved my crew. The man who made me believe and wonder again. Yes, Tejo. I want to marry you. With all my heart." Tejo looked into her purple eyes. He saw love there. Real love. The kind of love that poets write about and dreamers dream about. The kind of love that crosses galaxies and breaks barriers. He took her hands and held them tight. "Then yes," he said. "My answer is yes." Vela's face lit up with joy. She pulled him into an embrace, her arms wrapping around him like he was the most precious thing in the universe. And in that moment, he was. Behind them, the crew of the Silver Crown had gathered at the ship's entrance. They had been watching the whole scene. When they heard Tejo's answer, they erupted in cheers. Boro was crying again, tears streaming down his green face. Even the stern guards were smiling. Tejo and Vela pulled apart and looked at each other. He reached up and wiped a tear from her silver cheek. "So," he said, "what happens now?" Vela smiled and offered him her hand. Her grease-stained, wonderful hand. "Now," she said, "we go home. Together." Tejo took her hand and held it tight. He looked at the Silver Crown, the massive ship that would carry them to the stars. He looked at the alien crew who had become his friends. He looked at the woman who had become his future. Then he looked back at Earth, his small blue planet, soon to become just one of many worlds he would visit. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" Vela asked. "For crashing into my salvage yard." Vela laughed and kissed him gently on the forehead. "Thank you for fixing my ship," she replied, "and for fixing my heart." Together, hand in hand, they walked toward the Silver Crown. The crew parted to let them pass, bowing to their queen and their new king. Tejo nodded at them, still not used to such respect. But he would learn. He had time. He had eternity. The doors of the ship closed behind them. The engines roared to life. And slowly, gracefully, the Silver Crown rose into the sky. From the ground, old Sunya watched the ship disappear into the clouds. She smiled and waved. "Good luck, young man," she said softly. "Good luck." In the stars above, a new adventure was beginning. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, a simple mechanic from Earth was about to change the galaxy. Forever, not with weapons or armies, but with his hands, his heart, and his endless, wonderful ability to fix things.